champagne was spiked, son. Like, all the champagne was spiked. Everybody was passed the out. I don't drink, so I was playing that off like I don't drink. I smoke. Like, I smoke and I had my own weed, but like everybody was passed out. Yo, Diddy had that man in the room. Look, yes, I put my ear to the door and I brought the phone because Diddy started going in overdrive. I ain't know what the was going on, but I just heard balls slapping against cheeks. I heard struggling to take. I heard being like, yeah, daddy. When he started all that daddy this and daddy that, and then I heard some hollering and struggling. Like, yeah, I kept the phone there and I recorded all this because I was like, this Diddy rich.
Everybody kind of knew back in the day that Meek Mills and Puff was a little too friendly. Anytime two rappers or two people in the industry come dressed up alike on more than one occasion.
I'm at a point in my life, like, we all grew up in the streets and we try to be better, but they labeled us felons, sent us back to jail. I had to fight against that the whole time to gain my respect and be who I am today, and I'm proud of that.
The hip-hop world is moving like a crime scene right now, and the warning shots are getting louder. When 50 Cent speaks, the industry listens because history proves his threats rarely come empty. This time, the target isn't subtle. The message is blunt, calculated, and cold. Meek Mill is being lined up as the next domino, and the alleged tapes are being positioned as the final blow. This isn't just another social media jab or headline-chasing beef. This is about control, leverage, and receipts that have allegedly been sitting in silence for years. Insiders say the tension traces back to industry gatherings where alliances were formed quietly and favors were traded without paperwork. Names keep circling around the same rooms, the same late-night events, the same whispered warnings. Every time Diddy comes up, the tone shifts because his shadow looms over too many careers to ignore. What's different now is that the protection layer appears to be cracking. Legal pressure, public scrutiny, and past stories resurfacing have turned private rumors into public ammunition. The suggestion isn't just that audio exists, but that it documents conversations meant to stay buried, discussions that could rewrite reputations overnight.
I asked 50 about that. I asked him to take him shopping.
He told me to take me shopping. I looked at him like, what'd you just say?
Yeah, I thought he needed some clothes.
He doesn't even know what he's saying is like fruity. What? I'm a nice guy.
Oh, that's a nice gesture.
Let me get out. No, dude, you take me. That's what a guy says to a girl. You know he loves me.
I don't think he like you.
You know he loves me.
I don't think he like you.
Meek's silence has only fueled speculation, while 50's calculated timing suggests he's watching the board carefully, waiting for the right moment to flip it. The streets don't see this as entertainment. They see it as exposure season. When a veteran like 50 hints that someone is next, it's understood as a warning based on knowledge, not noise. Careers have collapsed under less, and the implication here is that loyalty once bought safety, but safety has an expiration date. In this game, history always comes back with interest, and the longer the tapes stay hidden, the more powerful they become when finally unleashed. The deeper fear isn't what's on the tapes, but why they're being mentioned now. Timing is everything in the industry, and this moment feels surgical. Meek Mill's past struggles with the justice system already placed him under a microscope, making him vulnerable to narratives beyond his control. Add whispers of private conversations, questionable alliances, and off-camera moments, and suddenly, the story writes itself without confirmation. That's how damage works in this business. Suggestion becomes assumption. Assumption becomes verdict. 50 Cent understands that better than anyone. He doesn't need to release anything immediately. The threat alone forces reactions behind closed doors. Phone calls get made, legal teams scramble, and former allies start distancing themselves publicly while checking their own archives privately. What makes this situation more dangerous is the audience climate. Fans are no longer satisfied with denials. They want proof, timelines, and context. Silence reads as guilt, and explanations read as spin. If tapes do surface, the content almost becomes secondary to the fact they exist at all. The narrative would lock in instantly, amplified by reaction culture and endless commentary.
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to f you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands-off with somebody. A number of producers.
Meek's legacy, his credibility, and even past wins would be re-examined frame by frame. Meanwhile, 50's position stays untouched because he's framed himself as the messenger, not the subject. That's power. It's the same strategy that's ended feuds without a single song being released. Industry insiders say this wave isn't about revenge. It's about control of the narrative before the courts and media do it first. Once that door opens, there's no closing it. Every association becomes a question mark, every old clip a potential exhibit. Whether the tapes drop or not, the damage clock has already started ticking. This is how careers end in the modern era, not with scandals alone, but with prolonged uncertainty that erodes trust piece by piece. If Meek is truly next, the real fallout won't be one explosive moment, but a slow collapse played out in public. The industry response to the warning hasn't been loud, but it's been telling. Quiet moves always matter more than public statements, and right now, the silence feels coordinated. When 50 Cent hints that the tapes are real, the people who know how the system works don't laugh it off. They pause. Behind the scenes, relationships are being reevaluated. Old messages are being reviewed, and long-forgotten nights are suddenly remembered in uncomfortable detail. The reason this situation feels heavier than a typical rap dispute is because it isn't framed as lyrical warfare. There are no diss tracks, no back-and-forth records, no studio theatrics. Instead, it's positioned like a countdown, where the threat itself is the weapon.
Actually, someone made reference to the fact that Diddy trying to get at Bieber the way he was trying to get at Bieber was looking a little predatory. And then Usher came in and discovered it and managed him and got custody of him and promised to look after him. And then he sent him to the devil.
For Meek Mill, that creates a dangerous vacuum. Every appearance, every interview, every move becomes content to be dissected. Fans notice body language. Commentators read into pauses. Even unrelated headlines start getting tied back to the same narrative. This is how public perception shifts before facts ever arrive. The suggestion of tapes alone allows speculation to run wild. And once the audience believes something is being hidden, denial becomes irrelevant. Industry veterans know this pattern well. Careers have unraveled not because evidence was released, but because confidence disappeared. What makes this moment different is how many past stories are suddenly being recycled and connected. Old rumors, half-confirmed claims, and long-dismissed anecdotes are being repackaged as puzzle pieces. The picture they're forming might not even be accurate, but accuracy doesn't always win online. Momentum does, and momentum is building fast. There's also the uncomfortable reality that the industry has protected certain people for decades while letting others take the fall. If those protections are weakening, everyone linked to those circles becomes exposed by association alone. The fear isn't just personal damage, it's collateral damage. Labels, collaborators, and sponsors all start asking the same question: is this worth the risk? That's how doors quietly close without announcements. No blacklist is needed when hesitation does the job. At this stage, whether the tapes drop tomorrow or never see daylight, the impact is already active. The narrative has moved from rumor to expectation, and expectations are hard to reverse. What's unfolding now feels less like a scandal and more like a pressure test on the entire culture. The modern hip-hop ecosystem thrives on authenticity, yet it also survives on selective silence. That contradiction is finally colliding. If the tapes exist, they represent more than damaging audio. They represent proof of how power actually circulates behind closed doors. And if they don't, The fact that so many people believe they might is still a problem. For Meek Mill, the challenge isn't just defending his name, it's navigating a climate where perception outweighs truth. Every attempt to get ahead of the story risks adding fuel to it. Every attempt to ignore it risks confirming suspicion. Meanwhile, 50 Cent remains strategically detached, letting others argue about morality while he controls timing. That's the most unsettling part of this situation. There's no urgency from his side, which suggests confidence. Confidence usually comes from leverage. The industry has seen this tactic before. Hold the threat long enough that the target exhausts themselves trying to outrun it. By the time anything is released, the damage is already baked in. This is also happening in an era where fans feel entitled to transparency. They demand explanations, not statements. They want timelines, not apologies. That environment turns any alleged hidden material into a ticking bomb because audiences believe the truth has been delayed on purpose. The longer that belief sits, the harsher the reaction becomes if something finally surfaces. Even if the content is less explosive than expected, disappointment can still turn into outrage. On the other side, if nothing ever drops, the shadow lingers anyway. Questions never fully disappear. They resurface during tours, interviews, and award seasons. That's the real cost. Not a single headline, but a permanent asterisk. This situation also sends a warning to everyone watching from the sidelines. Old alliances don't guarantee future protection. Silence today doesn't erase yesterday. And power doesn't always belong to the loudest voice, but to the one holding the archive. Whether this ends in exposure or fades into another unresolved mystery, it reinforces one truth about the industry. Nothing stays buried forever. The past waits patiently, and when it comes back, it doesn't knock. By this stage, the situation has moved far beyond rumors and into something more dangerous: anticipation. In the entertainment world, anticipation is often more destructive than confirmation because it invites everyone to fill in the blanks themselves. When 50 Cent publicly frames the idea that Meek Mill is next, it shifts the conversation from if something exists to when it will surface. That single change alters how media outlets, fans, and even business partners behave. Coverage becomes speculative instead of factual, with every new clip or quote treated like evidence. People begin connecting dots that were never meant to be connected, rewriting history in real time. Old interviews are replayed with new captions. Past friendships are reinterpreted as strategic alliances. Even moments of silence are treated as statements. This is how reputations get reshaped without a single document being released. What makes this particularly unsettling is that the industry has seen similar patterns before. Allegations float quietly for years, dismissed as gossip, until one influential figure validates them by implication. Once that happens, denial stops working. At that point, the public assumes there's a reason certain topics were avoided or certain questions were never answered directly. For Meek, this creates a narrative trap. Respond too aggressively, and it looks defensive. Stay quiet, and it looks calculated. Meanwhile, 50's history of surviving and even thriving after public conflicts gives his words extra weight. He's built a persona where exposing uncomfortable truths is part of his brand, which makes audiences more willing to believe he's sitting on something real. The industry reaction reflects that belief. Nobody is rushing to defend. Statements are carefully worded. Distances are subtly created. That alone speaks volumes. Even if the alleged tapes never come out, the ripple effect is already influencing decisions. Endorsements hesitate. Collaborations stall. Invitations quietly disappear. This isn't cancellation in the traditional sense. It's erosion. Trust erodes. Confidence erodes. And once that process starts, it rarely reverses completely. In this environment, perception becomes reality, and reality becomes whatever people repeat the most. What ultimately makes this moment so significant is what it reveals about power dynamics in hip-hop today. The genre was built on speaking openly, but the modern industry thrives on selective silence. When that silence is threatened, panic sets in. If the tapes are real, they symbolize more than personal fallout. They represent proof that certain conversations were never meant for public ears. If they aren't, the belief that they could exist still exposes how fragile reputations truly are. For Meek Mill, the coming months may define his legacy as much as his music ever did. Not because of what he releases, but because of how the story follows him. Every appearance becomes a test. Every achievement risks being overshadowed by the same unanswered questions. And for 50 Cent, the situation reinforces his role as a figure who controls narratives without needing constant attention. He doesn't have to explain himself. He doesn't have to rush. The uncertainty works in his favor. This dynamic sends a broader message across the industry. Nothing truly disappears. Old recordings, old messages, old conversations can resurface years later with devastating impact. Loyalty isn't permanent. Protection isn't guaranteed. And influence often belongs to whoever holds the archive, not whoever holds the mic. Fans watching this unfold aren't just reacting to drama. They're watching a lesson play out in real time. It's a reminder that fame amplifies everything, including the past. Whether this story ends with a shocking release or fades into another unresolved chapter, the damage potential has already been demonstrated. The warning has been issued, the tension is set, and the culture is watching closely for the next move. If this breakdown helped make sense of what's unfolding and why it matters, make sure to show support by hitting like and subscribing so you don't miss what comes next.